So in this video I wanted to talk about the Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro 4.6K. Now I know there's a lot of camera review videos out there already, and it's been out quite some time, but I want to tell you that we've purchased two of these when they came out, and we've done a lot of projects on these, and they are workhorses. You know, low light content, we've shot documentaries, we've shot short films, we've shot social media branded content, we've shot, you know, run and gun events, whatever, you name it, we have dealt with it. It's impressive what this little camera can do. I wouldn't say little, you know, it's kind of heavy, it's kind of bulky, but that's a good thing. In the cinema world, that's a good thing. And I wanted to just give a real world review and talk about how we're at the point where a $6,000 camera can compete with $40,000 to $50,000 cameras. Let's talk about the features. Let's start off with that because it's quite impressive what it can do right out of the box. They've just added Blackmagic RAW, so it can shoot 4.6K in RAW. It's a compressed RAW format similar to Red Code. So your file sizes are relatively small. I've seen them, you know, be as small as ProRes HQ and even smaller, but you still have that RAW capability. If you mess something up while you're shooting, or there's just a highlight that you clip, you can go back in, you can turn the ISO down, you can tweak things, and it's all okay. And you know, I'm not an advocate of doing that, you know, fix it in post, but you do have that adjustability and the functionality of that, and it's quite impressive for such a cheap camera. So it can do 60 FPS up to 4.6K. It's a Super 35 sensor, which is, you know, the film standard for many years. We see a lot of cameras are now doing large format and 65mm, but that's for big budgets. You know, that's for people who are really trying to separate from indie filmmakers, but we're not concerned with that. You know, having SDI, real SDI ports, professional inputs, XLR inputs, Canon EF mount, that's what it came with. But if we need the PL, we can rent it, and we can rent PL lenses, which we've done before. We have, you know, a top plate if we need to put certain things on, you know, rails and whatnot, and arms, and we put a small HD viewfinder here. That's, you know, our budget way of having a viewfinder, but the viewfinder that they do have is very good. I've used it before. We've got the handle, we've got the shoulder mount, which is quite impressive, and it's like pretty much a necessity because you got the rails and whatnot that you can put here. That allows you to put a follow focus, and we have the Anton Bauer mount, which we just felt was more robust and a little more professional than a V mount. We already had the batteries as well. The internal NDs are amazing as well. That was a huge deal in, you know, making the decision to purchase this camera over something like a Red Raven or whatnot. 4 stops of ND. Pretty much we've shot in the brightest of bright environments, and it's incredible how quick these NDs are and how high quality they are. The only issue is that the internal OLPF does not have an IR cutter in it. Yeah, to counter the IR filtration, we purchased a raw light OLPF, which, you know, it's a couple screws, it pops right in. It doesn't void the warranty or nothing. It gets rid of that moire and that aliasing issue that, you know, a lot of digital cameras are known for. That's one of the drawbacks this camera has compared to something like an Arri Alexa, which has that built in. For such a cheap camera, we wanted to maximize its potential, and we decided to purchase 2 of them for each of our cameras. So that was worth every penny. Yeah, let's talk about the price. A lot of people are on the fence. You know, it's still an expensive camera, being that it's about $6,000 for the body only, and that's not including all the necessities you need to get the camera up and running on a cinema professional level. Yeah, you could just buy the camera and throw little basic things on it and it will be fine, but if you really want to take full advantage of it and maximize its potential, you're going to want those accessories. You're going to want that handle, you're going to want that shoulder piece with the rail system, you're going to want a good monitor with waveform, which the, you know, stock monitor, which most cameras are not very good. It's low quality, but, you know, if you're buying one of these cameras, I would suggest, or I would assume, you kind of have a monitor of some sort that can easily be mounted in a multitude of ways. Obviously CF cards are expensive, but you can get SD cards which can shoot ProRes. You can get an SSD that can be mounted on the back with an accessory. The media can be, you know, quite expensive if you're shooting high resolution, so that's something you got to take into account. But now that, you know, in the age of 4K plus, that's pretty much with every camera. But when you're shooting RAW or, you know, a high quality ProRes, you're going to be eating through data, so be aware of that. Media can get expensive. Let's talk about the image quality. So I've used plenty of cameras over the years. I mean, I'm talking pretty much everything you could think of, from Sony F55s, you know, Canon C300s, C500s, Arri Alexas, Reds, what can I get that's under 10K that will rival those cameras? And you know, understanding that this camera is going to have those limitations. So in the image quality department, the colors are almost spot on. They are very, very accurate. They're very colorful and vibrant. It looks very filmic right off the rip. If you have a good colorist or you're a good colorist, you'll fully take advantage of that image. The dynamic range is amazing. It shoots in that log format as well, which is great. You can fully take advantage of, you know, high contrast scenarios and outside. I'd say one of the drawbacks in the image quality though is obviously the highlights do not roll off like an Alexa does, or like a red helium, or the high-end reds and whatnot. I'd say those two cameras are the only ones that really get that fall off, almost looking like film, if not exactly like film. This camera is close though. You can get it to look somewhat like that if you add certain things and you really know how to color. Like we've recently got a 1/8 Blackmagic Hollywood filter, which helps bloom some of the highlights and helps it roll off a little bit. There's also ways in the grade that you can do that to make it look more like an Arri Alexa, make it look more filmic. It's very sharp. I mean, even at 2K it's very sharp, even at 1080 it's very sharp. 4K and 4.6K is extremely sharp, to the point where it even can look a little digital. I find that at shooting at the native at 800, there's really no grain in the image. That's a specific look, I guess. If you like that clean look, this is that type of camera. I know Arris and Reds have a very fine grain to it that makes it look very filmic, and you don't start seeing that grain in this camera until you get to 1600. And I know a lot of people worry about the low light capabilities in this camera, and it's kind of a misconception, because I know people have gotten Lemons and they've gotten cameras where the sensor wasn't stabilized and wasn't optimized or whatever, and their blacks did have issues with it. And if you do underexposure image at 1600, you will get fixed pattern noise almost all the time, but you need to know how to expose your image, light it. I've shot plenty of situations and plenty of environments and plenty of films and whatnot in 1600, and because my waveform was correct and I was at 50-60 IRE, I didn't have fixed pattern noise. So that's a misconception. I think the low light capabilities are fine on this camera. They're not extraordinary. We don't run into situations where we need to shoot in pitch black. These cameras do like light, just like any cinema camera. So keep that in mind. You know, let's go on about the workflow. So I'd say the workflow is fairly straightforward. You know, shooting in Blackmagic RAW, you throw it right in Davinci, it'll read the codec. Blackmagic has its own RAW player similar to Red, and we've played it on laptops and it plays fine. You know, on 15-inch MacBooks with i7s, the footage has played fine on there. You know, going from Davinci to Premiere, pretty straightforward. Premiere doesn't natively accept the Blackmagic RAW, but if you're shooting something run and gun and something smaller, you know, you can shoot on ProRes and you have no issues. You throw it right into Premiere and you're editing, you're ready to go. But if you're gonna color in Davinci, you may need to make proxies and go back to Premiere, or just edit straight in Davinci natively. That's kind of a pain in some ways, but you know, we figured out how to do it fairly quickly and we're used to it now, and that's fine, because Davinci is great for coloring, and you know, the program comes with the camera and it's an awesome coloring program. And you know, being able to put LUTs and fully tweak and do all those cool things to your footage, being that if you shot in RAW, it's worth it. So it depends on the project and how your workflow is going to go. But seeing that these cameras shoot in 10-bit ProRes and 12-bit RAW, the color depth is incredible. You can shift the colors any which way you want. You can change the highlights, the shadows, you can push them up and down, and they do not fall apart whatsoever. So it's very impressive in the workflow and then image quality. Now let's talk about the ergonomics, because you know, seeing this camera, it's a small little block. The camera weighs about 5 pounds, but then when you start adding a lot of accessories on it that make it a cinema camera, it becomes heavy. You know, you're easily around 10 to 12 pounds with basic accessories. Now that may throw some of you off. For me, I like the capabilities of being able to just throw it on my shoulder. It's not as balanced as an Arri. You know, it's not built as well as an Arri, but it is built quite nice. You know, it's very rigid plastic. It feels nice in your hands. It's got the weight to be able to do that handheld movement if you want. It doesn't give you that, you know, that vibration DSLR look that so many people do, because you know, they just want to run and gun, and that's not professional. I'm not a big fan of that. But something like this with the weight, boom, you throw it on your shoulder, you know, you have your EVF here, your battery here, it's balanced enough. You get used to it, and I'm a big advocate of handhelding. I love handhelding with these cameras. It feels really good. So Ergonomics, I love it. Of course, it could be balanced better if you had their EVF. Like I use the small HD EVF, and you know, it sometimes doesn't stick far enough forward, so it's right here, and you know, that kind of throws me off because it's like right in my face, and I kind of gotta lean my back, and it just, you know, it can be uncomfortable. So like I said, it's not a $60,000 Arri Alexa that, you know, a studio version where you're meant to just throw it on your shoulder. It's not going to be like that, but it does work better than a lot of these other cameras in that situation. But you know, throwing it on a tripod or a dolly and rigging it to how you want it, it's quite modular, and I find that it works perfectly for any situation I need to throw it in. So I'm just going to wrap it up with my final thoughts. And I want to also mention that there's a lot of professionals out there that are using these. I know Roy Wagner from the American Society of Cinematographers really loves these cameras because it allows him to save so much on the budget, you know, to be able to put into production design and crew, which is so important. And I think so many people are worried about getting the biggest and most expensive camera, you know, and like I said, you know the limitations, and you know, if you have a great team, a great colorist, and just really talented individuals, you're gonna make this camera look just like that $50,000-$60,000 camera. That's the bottom line. So use your money on other stuff, more important stuff, and stop worrying so much about the slight little nuances between image quality and ergonomics. And there, you know, there's ways to make this camera even better that people don't know about, like I mentioned with the raw light and whatnot. Really maximizing and understanding what this camera can do and what it can't do, and I just think it's worth absolutely every penny. You can't beat it for the price. The image is insane. It's my baby, you know, I love it. And I know the version 2 one came out, and that's even better than this. If you don't want to spend the 6K on the new one, which will do, I believe, 120, utilizing the full sensor in 4.6K with a slight adjust to the color science, which I don't think is even needed because the color science on this is quite impressive already. You know, you have options. You can get the version 1 for a discount now, or you can, you know, jump for the 6K and get the version 2 if you need that higher frame rate, which a lot of the times we don't need, and if we do need that, we will rent something specifically for that. So great job, Blackmagic, with this product. You guys blew me away. It's quite impressive. I continue to use it all the time on all these videos I make. You know, anybody out there looking to get one, do it. Absolutely do it if you have the money.